Good morning, folks. Happy Saturday to you. I hope you're having a fantastic weekend. Coming at you live with this week's market wrap. So the market's a little psychotic, but I'm probably going to regret this. Um, I'm actually, feeling pretty bullish about at least the end of the year in the very short term, and we'll go through why through as we move through the video here, but. So one of the things that we talked about last week was I felt that we really needed the biotech, the IBB, to break out over resistance in order for the rest of the market to push higher. And it looked like we were in real trouble on what was it, Thursday, when we had the big sell-off in the market. But this is the bearish ETF for the IBB. And look at how it came right up into resistance here, this trend line. And then on Friday, we had a complete reversal, right? And I think it's important. I still believe that if the IBB can break out of its resistance, and let's take a look at the IBB real quick. Boom, boom, boom. Right, we were talking about how we had come up right into this resistance. We need to break over it, and if we can take this out with some conviction, then I think that that's good for the overall markets. Now we've got a big conference this weekend, ASH conference or something that's going on. I saw a couple articles from Adam Feuerstein, whatever his name is. A couple of positive articles it looked like, which is a little unusual for him. He usually likes to bash stocks, but if we can get some positive action in the IBB, I really do think that that would be good for the markets. Now, there are some other interesting things that happened this week that do make me a little. I mean, it's like I said, the market just seems kind of psychotic. Uh, you know, Last week we talked about this area of resistance that we're coming up to in the Nasdaq. We looked like we were in trouble. We came down. Last week I felt we could get a short-term pullback, and that's exactly what we got. We got a short-term pullback, and then Friday we just bounced right back into that resistance again. So if we can get a continuation, right, and a breakout over that level, I think that's going to be potentially pretty bullish for the markets in the short term. Let's take a look at so here's something that's a little on the flip side, right? Gold had a pretty strong little bounce on last week. Now it's coming up into resistance. The miners had a nice little bounce. Now that could have been a very short-term trade. It'll be interesting to see if that strength continues. I did notice throughout my scans of stocks to watch for next week that there were a lot of gold miner stocks that were, their charts were intriguing. Okay, but they are coming up into some areas of resistance, so it'll be interesting to see if we get any kind of follow through in gold or the miners, which is kind of contrary to what of having a strong market, right? That would be a little on the flip side of what we want to see. Actually, we'd probably want to see gold weaken again, right, and see stocks get stronger. The IWM is interesting, right? It looked like it was going to be in trouble on Thursday. And we had that pullback, and we talked last week about how we were coming up into this long-term resistance, right? Let's back it out to the weekly. We talked about how we were coming up into that long-term resistance, and that was likely going to provide some resistance, and maybe that was my reasoning that we may have a little bit of a pullback in the IWM. And then if you look at it, Friday we basically held this shorter term trend line. We held that as support and bounced right off of it. So now it looks as though maybe we're going to come back up and test this 120 again. So, you know, but what's it doing? It's working it off through time, right? It's kind of coiling up like a spring, not necessarily in a sideways motion, but we have a little bit of an uptrend, and it keeps tightening up, right? I mean, we're going to keep tightening up, and then eventually it's going to break one way or another. Is kind of what I'm thinking. So the IWM held up to this trend line. That's nice to see. Maybe we get a continuation and a follow through back up into this 120. If we can crack that 120 with conviction and break back over the 200-day moving average with some conviction, that could be pretty powerful, right? So IWM, IBB, I think are very important. We need to pay close attention to those. The one thing I will say that I wasn't crazy about what happened, and you all know that I've really liked the way the energy sector names have held up, even though the underlying commodity, oil, looked as though it was going to go back down and test lows. And we'll get to that in a second. One of the things that I found interesting was this action in the TAN, which is solar. I think we have First Solar reporting next week. That could give a boost to this solar sector, which has been in a clear downtrend, right? This is a dominating downtrend. It's been an ugly sector. We've basically been tapping this 25.50 area for a while and haven't been able to break below it. And now, you know, we keep testing this trend line. We're right up into it, actually closed a little bit above it on Friday on some pretty good volume. So, but the thing is, you know, the trade that has been happening is solar has been following oil, right? And oil had a pretty weak day, end to the week last week after the OPEC meeting, and they said, you know, basically they're not going to make any cuts in production. So I think solar is an interesting area to watch. It would be interesting to see if we could break that correlation that we've had with oil. If solar could start moving, you know, up, even if oil continues to decline. So the solar sector is interesting, one to pay attention to. What else? So let's take a look at oil real quick. So basically, you know, we're sitting right here at these lows that we made back in August, and then, you know, people now are saying, you know, Goldman Sachs call for $20 a barrel seems very doable. And one of the things that I didn't like was that some of those charts that were looking really good in the energy sector actually have kind of broken down. They don't look as clean or as sweet as they were looking. And now maybe they start to follow the overall oil, the overall commodity if it continues to decline, right? So you got to be a bit careful there. Another sector that, you know, the one fly in the ointment that was is a bit concerning. We'll see how this reacts next week, is the transportation sector. Now, transportation sector is kind of interesting because there's a few things like the rails not doing well, because I think it was CSX that came out and said that, you know, coal shipments were down more than expected. I think they lowered their number. That's not good. And they have a pretty big weighting within the transportation sector. But, you know, I did also notice that a lot of the airline stocks actually look pretty good, and we're moving to new highs. So, you know, kind of an interesting little scenario going on there. FedEx and UPS also look fairly interesting. So I'm not really sold on the fact that, you know, the transportation sector, the overall transportation sector is in trouble. I think there's portions of the transportation sector that are in trouble. Let's see. You know, mid caps look very similar to the IWM, right? We basically came down and tested this shorter term trend line, and for now have held it, okay, which is kind of positive. Let's see what else we got going on here. S&P 500. I mean, look, we sliced right through the 200-day moving average. I mean, it did look as though we were going to be in trouble, but again, Friday had a nice recovery, which was pretty bullish action. Let's see what else we've got going on. that I really wanted to highlight. So, I did a little bit deeper dive, and one of the things I looked at was some of the Momo stocks, or some of the big stocks that like the FANG stocks. Microsoft looks incredibly strong. MasterCard, it looks compelling, right? I mean, here we are in the holiday season. Had a good Cyber Monday. People are loading up their credit cards, buying online. I mean, let's see if we got Visa. Actually, looks pretty interesting, right? And it kind of makes sense. I mean, people are buying for the holidays, so I think that's a good sign. I think these stocks look pretty healthy. Disney, is the one stock that is having a bit of a pullback, and I find this one interesting as well. If you kind of look at this channel, right, that it's been trading since we had this big decline, it's basically come down to the bottom of this channel. So I wouldn't be surprised. I think what is it? The movie Star Wars coming out. I think it's next weekend. So wouldn't be surprised to see Disney bounce into the release of the movie. Now, I will also say that the expectations for Disney's movie, the Star Wars, are extremely high. So if it disappoints on its, box office, you're going to see Disney take a hit. But like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a little run into the release of the movie. Okay, what else we got going on? Dun, dun. See if there's anything else that really is standing out to me. You know what? I'm not going to drag this out. I'm going to be back in a minute here with my stocks to watch for next week. Plenty of things to keep an eye on. But like I said, there were a lot of, if you look at some of the FANG stocks, and I call them the gap stocks because they all gapped. I mean, Google's looking really constructive. Amazon, I mean, oops, looking very constructive. I mean, a lot of these, that narrow band of stocks look pretty compelling. Baba is another one that looks pretty compelling. I mean, if it can take out this 85-60 area with conviction, I think Baba could get moving. So, I am, for the most part, pretty darn bullish on the markets. There are some outliers and things that we need to be cautious of. I think you kind of need to avoid the oil and the energy sector. But I think there are some pretty compelling looking setups out there. So anyway, bullish for next week, bullish in the short term. Hopefully there's not a lot of gap up days. Hopefully we get, actually I prefer gap down days and then reversals. We'll see what happens. We'll see if we get a gap up continuation on Monday. I hate those days. They're usually my most difficult days to trade. But for the most part, folks, I am pretty bullish heading into next week. Now watch. Like I said, I'll probably regret this. Something bad happened over the weekend and things will gap down. But look, like my post on Friday, keep an open mind, folks. I mean, things can change very, very quickly, right? I mean, we had a terrible event happen last week in San Bernardino. Things can change very, very quickly. So just because I'm saying I'm bullish doesn't mean that something might happen that could turn that all around, okay? So just keep an open mind. But for the most part, I am pretty darn bullish on the markets in the short term. All right, I'll be back shortly with my stocks to watch for next week.